Good afternoon. Welcome to week 2, lesson 3. In this class, we'll be discussing about reproduction in plants, and we'll be discussing reproduction in plants. Have you ever wondered? Have you ever wondered how plants reproduce? For instance, you put seed into the soil. You covered it with the soil. You put some tiny seed like that into the soil. You cover the seed, and after like some days, few days, it turns to seedling, as in it grows. It starts bringing in something from the soil, and it turns to seedling. During the period when it turns to seedling, you move it again, it grows again, it becomes vegetative, starts having leaves and everything, branches and everything. After some time, it started growing, it's becoming tall, and the root keeps developing, as in it's establishing itself and sitting down in the soil. And then at some point, you find out that, oh, my plant is already flowering. After the leaf period, it gets to flowering, it started flowering, and then after like some weeks or whatever, you just notice you see some beautiful flower. It could be red, it could be green, it could be any sort of color. Have you ever wondered how plants get to that? Yeah, that is their growth period, plant growth. Then at that flower point, you notice in the seed, that beautiful flower, it just suddenly turn, and then you start seeing seed. Cucumber, tomato, you plant your coconut, you plant everything. Oranges, you see them, at some point they were flowering. The cashew, at some point they were flowering, and get to another point, you just find out they were bringing fruits. Now, these fruits, you went there, you pluck them, the one you want to eat, you eat and everything. And then the coming year, you come to that same point, or even you find out that some seed fell down, as in some of the seed from the fruit you were harvesting, they were falling down anywhere. And then you find out that those seeds, they start germinating again. Have you ever wondered how they start reproducing themselves? How did they get to produce seed? That should be the point you should worry about as a farmer, because if you plant and your plant is not producing seed, is not regenerating himself, is not reproducing himself, it means you cannot have better yield. You cannot reproduce next year. You cannot have better yield. So reproduction is the stages by which plants reproduce themselves. Just like human being, we were giving birth to when we were young. We grew up. We got to a stage. We went to school. After school, we graduated. We got job. We got married. And as we got married, then we start giving birth to children. How do you start giving birth to children? Yes, the same thing you should ask your plant. If you are planting, how did they start giving birth to children? So there's a cycle of everything. So just like human beings, plants are living things, and plants also produce through some method. Yes, plants are living things. You heard me say it. If they are living things, that's why they die. They are living things, that's why we need to give them water to grow. They are living things, that's why we need to give them enough fruit, enough nutrient for them to develop. They are living things, that's why we feed them. If you don't feed the soil to feed your plant, you will not get anything. So plants are living things, just like animal, livestock. You are a crop farmer, means you are taking care of something that has bread, and you have to take care of it for you to produce for you, just like the way livestock farmers are taking care of their life, or the animals. So now there's a stage, the point at which these crops reproduce is called reproduction period stage. And the stage, like I said, I've explained the cycle of the way they produce. Now, flower is the reproductive part of crop. Yeah, flower, just the ordinary flower. They are the reproductive part of crop. Now, not only, let me not jump, flower, there are two types of, their reproduction in plants are two types. It could be sexual reproduction, and it should be asexual reproduction. Now, reproduction, we've all known, is the production of offspring. Sexual reproduction is the method by which two parents comes together. As in two parents, you have the female part and you have the male part. I'm sure you are surprised. I'm sure you've never bothered to look for your female, to wonder where the female part is in your crop or where the male part is. Yes, your plant, as you're looking at them, they have female and the plant is one, but when it gets to a stage where they want to reproduce, there's always a female and male part of it. And the two, in sexual reproduction, there's always a female and male part of it. In asexual reproduction, there's a system we call asexual. Asexual means there's no two parents. In asexual, there's where we call grafting, budding, and all this stuff. Now, so there are two types of reproduction in plants. There's a sexual one where two parents are involved, and there's a asexual one where no parent, there are parents but not two, just one. You cut from the part of the parent to produce another one. Okay, now in asexual reproduction, I've told you there are two. Now in asexual, into detail. Asexual reproduction, one parent copied itself to form a identical offspring. Yeah, they copy themselves and form a identical offspring. So in that asexual reproduction, that is where we have grafting, that is where we have budding, that is where we have layering, that is where we have sectioning of rhizomes, that is where we have root tubers. Now, let me give you some brief examples. In grafting, we graft some oranges, we graft some mangoes, we graft some, we cut from one. You can see this picture here. This is the parent plant. Then we cut at a slant. You cut and plant it and replant it again. And then it germinates. You see, you put it in soil or compost, sand, and it germinates. It becomes another big fruit again. That is grafting. That is cutting. There's grafting, there's budding, there's layering, there's suctioning of the rhizome. They are the ones we plant through their stems. Like if you want to plant yam, you cut the tubers to plant again. That is their own reproduction. It's asexual. Yam is asexual. Potatoes, they're asexual. This other thing, basil, you can plant basil asexual. You can cut the leaves, the stem, and plant. So anything you can cut the stem and plant, they are asexual reproduction in crops. But the ones that you cannot cut the stem, that you have to use seed and everything, that is sexual reproduction, where you need two parents. It's the two parents that produce the seed that you are planting. If you are planting seed, it means you are using double parent. But if you are using cutting, grafting, budding, layering, they are just one. They were able to use, currently they are using budding and all this cutting to be able to produce all these short stem tree crops. Those tree crops that were using 10 years, 15 years before, they were using all this system of budding to reproduce them. Imagine cutting this one and planting. It will quickly start fruiting faster than when you plant seed. So all these asexual methods are a bit faster than using direct seed method, and that's why all of us are buying seedling. It is the seedling they cut from one plant, they germinate, they are selling to us. So if you are using plant, having your own seed to plant it, it will take longer years. So that's why they are cutting all these things, and that's why we're having short-term crops now. Instead of 10 years, we have 3-4 years coconut, 4 years lemon, and all this stuff, because they are cutting them down. Now, that is asexual. So any crops, so you really need, as a farmer, okay, you may be wondering, where did she take us to again? What is this in the class? Because I want to see if it is what you don't understand, that you don't know how to run it. If you understand the production method of the crop you are planting, or of the tree you are planting, you'll be able to run it effectively. You'll be able to manage it effectively. You will know, okay, this is what I need to do for my crop, for my plant to perform very well. But if you don't really know, and you are just plant, you don't know. Most people don't know. This is what people assume agriculture is just something you just pick question here, pick answer here, and combine it and you get results. No, it doesn't work that way. There's a lot of things you need to understand. So you need to know which section, which part your crop, your intended crop, or the crop you plant is falling into, so you'll be able to germinate it. So this is asexual reproduction. I won't bother writing all this, cutting, grafting, budding. I want you to have the idea to understand exactly. But if you have questions, you can send your question through emails, or when we meet on Saturday, you can send your question so that we can discuss it. Now we move to you can see this is another method of asexual reproduction. They cut this and join it to another tree. That is where they do budding, that is where they do grafting, that is where they do a lot of things. So these are asexual reproduction. Now let's go to the sexual reproduction. Those flowers that are coming out are the sexual reproduction for your crop. Yes, any crop that is producing flower, they have sexual reproduction. And it is in that same flower that you have your female and your male organism. Now, we said they are male and there's female. So this is a flower. You can see the picture I'm showing here. This is a flower. Now, there's a stigma. Stigma is the female part. There's a female part. There's a male part. There's a stigma. There's an anther. Anther is the female part, and stigma is the male part. Anther has this thing called stamen and pollens, and the pollens need to move from this place and move to the stigma. They need to combine together, and you can see the way they are in the picture. This is the one. This is where we are taking the pollen, and where the stigma is high up. So how will it get there? it cannot fly, it cannot move up here, and it needs to go by natural means. So this is where pollination comes in sexual reproduction. Now, pollination happens, you pick one parent and another parent and you combine. It is because of pollination they were able to produce all these hybrid seed for us, hybrid fruits, those improving yield and everything, because they take from the female and the male and combine them. That's how they were able to produce all these hybrid seed, where you plant small, you get big, as in that we usually go and buy hybrid seed. Now there's the process of moving the anther from this space to this other stigma. It is called pollination. Now, how will this move? The flower cannot move from where it is, this one cannot move, so it goes by other processes. We are going to check into it. Now, look at this picture here. This is pollination, as in this is a flower, pollen grains, and it has the pollen grains, and see the pollens are plenty in the pollen grains, and these pollen grains needs to move to the stigma before it will produce fruit. I told you the pollen grains are the female, while the stigma is the male. So the two, they need to combine, they need to meet up before we can start giving. Okay, the stigma is the female, don't mind me. The stigma is the female, while the pollen is the male. So they need to move together and combine together before you can get a fruit. You keep wondering, you see, people don't really. Now here we now have the bees. There are two methods of pollination. There are two ways by which pollination can occur. One, through animals, as in bees. Animals is only, I think it's only bees that perform that function. Honeybees, what they do is they are looking for something called nectars. There's something always in a flower. I remember when we were young, we used to pick the nectars and suck it. It's sweet a bit, red in flowers and everything. So the bees love sucking those nectars. So it is those nectars combination with water, with whatever, that they used to produce honey. Now, in the process of the bees looking for the nectars that they eat, they feed on, they love taking nectars, they enter and nectars are always found inside flowers. So in the process of the bees looking for the nectars, they got into the flowers, and they got into the pollen side of the flowers. Pollen, stigma, it could be any side of the flower. All they know is that they are looking for nectars. So when they find the nectars, as they are trying to pick the nectars, this pollen, this tiny pollen, will attach to their wings, to their body. To attach to their wing and their body, and then pick pollen. And bees, they touch this. In the morning, if you come to our farm, when we have flowers and everything, the bees, they wake up early in the morning. They wake up when you come to the farm in the morning. They wake up. The bees, they will jump from one flower to another. In a twinkle of an eye, they can jump from 10 flowers. You watching them early in the morning. If you go to the place where they have fruits that are producing flower, just notice them, study them. You see them jumping from one to another, jumping from one flower to another. In the process of them jumping from one to another, their body is picking grains, is picking picking pollens. Their skin, the pollens are very tiny. You can't really see them with the eye. So is picking it, and as they are picking the pollens, as they're picking the pollens, they move. As they move to another flower, it will be falling down on the flower. They pick, they drop, they pick, they drop. And so as they are perching and moving from other flowers, and they are doing pollination. Unknowingly to them, they are making us to produce food. The bees, yes, they are helping us to produce food. And that's the process by which food are produced. Now, the other method of pollination is by wind. As in, when wind is blowing, maybe wind is blowing, you can look at it. Look at it. Now, see, bees are their pollinators. Pollinators help flowers move from pollen from flower to flower. They move from this flower, move to another flower. Flowers reward pollinators with nectar and pollen. They love the nectar. That's what they are looking for there. So now, in the process of, you can see the picture here, you see the bees, this is their work, this is what the bees do. They move around and do this. The second method of pollination is by wind. And as in, when wind is blowing, those pollens will blow and then get to another flower, and then that is another method of pollination, as in it moves by wind and everything. But now there's something I really want to point out here. 80% of all plant population, 80%, can you imagine that figure? 80% of pollination are done by animals. as in maybe other animals with bees and everything. So they carry the majority vote. So do you imagine and visualize if there were no animals or there were no plants? Have you ever done that? 80% of pollination or food production are done by bees and other animals. 20% is by that cutting, that grafting, that one I told you we were doing, cutting, grafting. That is 20% of abiotically pollinated species. Now 2% by water. So these are the things you really need to put in mind and understand that, okay, bees are very, very important to your farm if you really want to increase your yield. You see, the process of people spraying, okay, I will show you example of how, I'll show you example of what the world will be without bees, what the possibility of what we have without bees.